Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the EBA webinar podcast series. My name is Aaron Smith. I'm the CEO of EBA, and I'm joined as always by Nancy Bakeman, our Executive Vice President. We're glad to have Bronte Payne, the Government Affairs person for Sunrun, and Matt Brost with us today. I think there's been a lot of questions on the House reconciliation bid, so we're going to cover the changes that it makes to the current energy credits. We're going to talk about the impacts of cutting energy tax credits. And then I think most importantly, how to take action and whom should take action to protect critical energy tax credits. So Bronte, I think you're kicking us off here today on the housekeeping. We'll put questions in the Q&A. You can put them in the chat as well. I think we're going to go through today's presentation and then we'll answer questions at the end. As always, this will be recorded and available at the eba.org learning management system and on our Better Homes, Better Future podcast. We'll also put this out through email for anyone that wants. And we appreciate you joining us here today on a Thursday. Bronte or Matt, take it away.
Great.
I'm happy. Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
Thanks, Aaron. Appreciate it. I think we're gonna just give everybody a quick little video to get things going. Then I'll go through the agenda. It's going to be, I think this will be a shorter meeting than the hour that we have, but we'll see how much Q&A we have. But first, Julia's queuing up a short little video to give provide a little bit of background for everyone.
Energy independence. It's more than panels or battery storage. More than savings or peace of mind during blackouts. It's a massive American industry with over 330,000 workers, 300 factories, and $286 billion in local investments across all 50 states. Q-Cells panels manufactured in Georgia, Tesla batteries in Nevada, along with hundreds of local plants, all working together to reduce the cost of energy and give people a choice when it comes to their power. Because we believe it's energy that makes this country so great. It powers American homes and innovation. It keeps us ahead of the AI race.
China's right behind us.
So we can go as far and as fast as we want to go. So while electric bills keep going up and an aging utility grid can't keep pace with demand, we're putting more capacity and innovation into the grid. More manufacturing jobs into the market, and more savings into over 5 million homes by creating an industry made for America, in America, by Americans.
All right, so we'll flip back. First of all, I just wanted to thank everybody for attending. I think we have about a little over 30 people, maybe 50 registered, so I wouldn't be surprised if we had a few more show up a few minutes late. I would imagine most people are aware of the reconciliation bill, also referred to as the Big Beautiful Bill by President Trump. That we are largely talking about that and the impacts of that bill and what it's having on the energy industry. And just for a little bit of background, where we're at right now is the House passed a bill last week, and in that bill were certain energy tax credits were preserved when it was introduced by the House Ways and Means Committee. Late hours just prior to the House passing the bill, there were certain tax credits stripped out that impacted both the building industry as well as the solar and battery storage industry, which is what we're going to cover today. So we're going to talk about the impact of what that looks like. It's currently with the Senate right now, so the Senate is making decisions. We are expecting the Senate to make some changes, and we're advocating hard that we make changes based on the content of what we're going to talk about today. And we're going to basically finish this with ways that we are asking you all on this phone, on this meeting webinar to take action if you're supportive of the discussion. So with that, I think what I'll do is I'll hand it over to Bronte to paint a little bit more of a background on where we're at right now.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. So as Aaron said, my name is Bronte Payne. I'm a senior policy manager at Sunrun. covering new homes policy and working a lot on the reconciliation bill, as are folks all across the industry. So as Matt said, where we stand right now is the bill was passed on the House floor and is now with the Senate, where negotiations are ongoing. I'm sure for anybody following this bill, you know the bill is incredibly broad. There are a ton of elements to it. So what we're going to be covering today is really just a narrow set of the parts of the bill focused on the energy tax credits. So what's in the House bill that, like I said, is now being considered by the Senate? The first thing it does, and this is one of the last minute changes that happened right before the bill was sent to the House floor for a vote, is that it eliminates the ability for home lease solar systems to use the 48E tax credit. The 48E credit is the commercial investment tax credit. Now it's a tech neutral tax credit that different types of energy systems can use. And this is the tax credit that's used for third-party ownership models, if that's how solar in new homes are financed. And it's a really critical option for new homes because this is what allows folks like Sunrun to offer a zero down option for homeowners. The second thing, and this was a change that was made in the House Ways and Means version, is that it eliminates 25D. This is the personal tax credit that a homeowner would use if they are purchasing their solar. And it makes both of these changes, they would go into effect at the end of 2025. And the last thing we're going to briefly touch on, because it particularly relates to home builders, is this was also in the House Ways and Means bill. It eliminates 45L. This is the tax credit for homes that are built to standards, either Energy Star or the Department of Energy Zero Energy Ready program. And that would also be eliminated at the end of 2025. The bill makes a set of other changes that relate to the energy tax credits. So it creates a placed in service requirement that really changes a decade of credit qualification that used to be based on the beginning of construction. It puts in place some restrictions around foreign entities of concern. So if you hear people say things like FIAC, that's what they're referencing. And this could cause a project to lose tax credit eligibility, even if the project is sourced from a US manufacturer or a country that's not designated under FIAC, because it sort of sets much stricter restrictions under that. And then it repeals transferability. And that is a tool that is used in monetizing the tax credit to be able to transfer the tax credit to other entities. So that's where we are in terms of what was in the House bill. There are a lot of negotiations happening in the Senate. If folks are following the news, I'm sure you feel a little bit like it changes every day, but these negotiations are very much ongoing, and something that we're really closely engaged in and watching. I'll turn it back to you, Matt.
Okay, so I'll go through these rather quickly because I think it's fairly obvious. The 48E, if you go to slide, if you bounce forward a couple of slides, please. For Bronte just said it, but for the leasing programs, for the PPA programs, which are one and the same, also referred to as third party owned, it is the 48E tax credit that is the driver of us being able to offer those programs. It's a 30% tax credit. And so, 30% of the system cost is obviously a very meaningful portion of the system cost. It also has some additional adders. One really important one is domestic content. And so as a result of domestic content, we have Sunrun sources nothing from China. We source all of our PV modules for our home builder division out of Georgia, which is Q cells. We source a significant amount of power walls out of Nevada. And this domestic content certification allows us to receive an additional 10%. So we can get up to 40% of the tax credit, which helps us provide the zero down financing that we see. About half of our customers choose the zero down financing, and then the other half of the customers choose to purchase the system. But I think it's important to say here that with the 25D going away, the customers who are purchasing it will no longer receive a 30% personal tax credit after December 31st, 2025. So that's most likely going to go away. So, which might put more of an emphasis on the 40 program can bring savings to consumers. If we can go to the next slide. As far as the economic impact, our industry employs about 330,000 people across the United States. In all states, we have a fairly significant number of people employed. The red states on this chart you can see are states where there are large numbers, either due to strong solar policy or because they are states where we see a heavy amount of manufacturing that started up. And as a result of like the domestic content requirements and the effort to move manufacturing to the U.S., we have actually, as a country, invested quite significantly, and companies significantly, to the tune of billions of dollars of building plants, solar manufacturing, battery manufacturing, inverter manufacturing, racking manufacturing has all come to the United States. If we lose this, that is going to have a very significant impact on all of those manufacturing facilities. So I think it's just important to talk about the economic impact and the loss of jobs that this is almost surely going to create if we're unable to get the Senate to revise the bill.
Matt,
And
if I could,
go ahead and add in if you have things you would like to say.
yeah, I was going to say one thing I wanted to highlight, because I'm sure folks that are following this bill have seen so much discussion around the national debt, what we're getting in tax revenue. And I think one thing that's really important is the 48E, because it supports the residential industry and companies that make up the supply chain. We estimate that the residential industry and supply chain companies send about $2.5 billion in tax revenue to the federal government in 2024. So all of that stands to be lost if this credit goes away. And it's a meaningful amount that this industry contributes to federal tax revenue.
Well, and I think it's the tax revenue is actually greater than the subsidies that the program provides. So it's actually a net loss in terms of revenue. So if we could go to the next slide. I think some of you might be surprised. I don't know that 84% of the generation in 2024 came from solar and battery storage. This is a combination of rooftop solar and utility scale power. Something to know is like the demand on the electrical grid is growing substantially. We keep hearing about AI, and AI's demand is like nothing we've ever seen. The appetite for energy. Just yesterday or 2 days, I think 2 days ago, Constellation Energy did a massive energy deal with Meta, and Meta ended up paying above the market rate for energy because if you listen to their analysts, what they're saying is it takes 7 years right now to get in line to get a new gas turbine. It takes at least, like best case scenario, 12 years if you wanted to build nuclear. Yet we were able to add 84% of the grid in a single year. Solar and battery industry will not be able to do that in future years. And there won't be actually other power supply producers that can come online as quickly as our industry can come online. So I think it's a really important point, because what that means is electricity prices are going to go up nationwide. They've already gone up last year under the Biden administration. But if we're not adding new capacity, we can absolutely expect to see an increase in our electricity prices across the country. And if you're in California, you know just how expensive that's been in recent years. So, Bronte, you want to add anything there?
Yeah, I think the one thing I wanted to add, just to really highlight how much capacity we are talking about, just Sunrun, we add the equivalent of a nuclear power plant's worth of capacity to the grid every single year. So like really, these are large scale resources that we're adding on the tops of people's roofs all across the country. So really, I think a hard resource to replace.
And it's not like we are asking the Senate to give us subsidies for, with no end date in sight. As a matter of fact, the House bill that we were good with had a several year sunset date. So it basically gave us a period of time to change our business plans, to plan for a step down in the subsidies that are provided. The problem with the bill today is that it rips the subsidies out overnight, which our businesses, and I'm not just talking about Sunrun, You think about Sunrun or manufacturers who have massive P&Ls built around policy stability, and then this happens. It makes it, we can plan for an inevitable outcome given the right glide path to do so, but unfortunately, the current bill doesn't do that, and that's why it's also going to be extremely painful, just because of the immediacy of the impact and the inability to plan for it. Go to the next slide. So builders on the phone, the way I'm characterizing this, maybe in overly simplistic terms, at least in California and other states where we're doing solar, and there are requirements in other states for solar, so this isn't just a California thing, but it's about $10,000 a home, give or take, depending on where you're at, size of your home, that sort of thing. $10,000 added cost because we would not be able to provide a zero cost program if this were to go through. So for every 1,000 closings, you're talking about $10 million in added cost. And of course, that just goes to the consumer because we would have to, build those costs into the price of the home in a time when affordability is extremely challenged. Prices are increasing based on tariffs. So it just compounds an already challenging issue for our industry and the homeowners who end up having to pay for it. So, Bronte, I'm going to let you go ahead and take this one.
Yeah, so I think Matt touched on this earlier, but one of the really big impacts of what's currently being proposed is that people all across the country would see higher utility bills. So one of the things about rooftop solar is it not only provides savings to the customers that choose to add it to their roof, but it helps all ratepayers across the grid. So if this bill was to go into effect, we expect that bills would skyrocket. States across the country would see their utility bills go up. We know that electricity prices have already been increasing, and this would just multiply. So multiple studies have found that repealing the 48E credit and other energy credits would increase the cost of electricity. So that's why we're really focused on what we're able to do is bring huge amounts of capacity to the grid that lowers utility bills and really drives some affordability for families all across the country. And it's one of the reasons that we really think that these tax credits should stay in place and allow businesses to plan around a transition because of the benefits that we're providing across the board.
Would it be a good time to take any questions or Q&A on that content, and then we can maybe move into like taking action just to see if there's any clarifying questions?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah, I haven't had any questions come in yet. So I would say that we move on, but let's have this be a note to the audience that please put your questions in the Q&A section, and maybe after the how to take action section, we will come back and revisit those questions.
Yeah,
right.
and maybe as we do that, Bronte, what I'll just say is like in the last several weeks, like I've been wearing mainly my policy hat, and I've spoken to a lot of builders on this topic, CEOs, executive teams, and we've had a resounding amount of support for our industry, and builders understand and really want to preserve this tax credit. And 45L is important too, but we're seeing the importance of this 48E, right up there with the 45, if not above it, for a number of builders based on their strategy. And I just can't emphasize enough how important the builders have been in talking to the LDA, but more importantly, or equally as important, is actually in states where they're red states, where there are key senators that we need to get to, and they're building there, picking up the phone and calling the senator. We've had many examples of conversations from builders with senators or Senate staffers, or leaving messages that are actually having a meaningful impact. So Bronte is going to go through this, but I just can't express to you enough. Businesses, which are constituents within these states, it means a lot for your senator to hear from you on the importance of this. And even if it's most important to you in California, but yet you're building in North Carolina where Tillis is, having your North Carolina division or people or CEO or someone contact Tillis's office still will help every state in the union address this, as well as like all of the other side benefits, just lower electricity rates and things like that. So why don't you take it over, Bronte?
Yeah, I mean, just to echo what Matt is saying, even if you, like, if you're a builder that's including solar or solar plus storage to help homeowners reduce their energy costs and their operating costs of their home, obviously the proposed changes will affect you. If you're somebody that is not including solar, these proposed changes will still affect you and will still affect your home buyers by doing things like raising electricity costs and will make living in a home more expensive. So yeah, can't agree with Matt enough that making your voice heard, particularly the next couple of weeks, is going to be really, really important. And for that, we really have 3 priority actions and then one sort of catch-all. Anything you're interested in doing, you can send me an email and I'm more than happy to get you plugged in. But the first thing is going to be calling senators, particularly in a set of target states, which I'll show in a second. Republican senators are going to be the most important here because obviously Republicans are in the majority, so they hold the pen on what changes are going to be made to this bill. In terms of where the bill is right now, it's going to be the energy credit portion is with the Senate Finance Committee. So having those members hear from you if you are a constituent in their state, if you build in their state, is going to be really important. Second priority action is going to be emailing senators. So not just talking to them on the phone, but sending them an email as well. And then the third thing is asking the people in your network to get engaged. Like we laid out, this would have an impact on everyone, even if you're not a home builder, even if you're not doing solar. Nobody wants to see their electricity bill skyrocket. So asking the people in your network to get engaged, particularly if they're in a set of target states. And I'll put my email in the chat too. You can obviously take a screenshot or copy it from here, but we'll make sure that it gets sent out too. So you can go on the next slide.
And real quick to what Bronte said is that it's important to everybody understand, because I see these messaging a lot, that, well, if you shouldn't need subsidies to be a business that stands on its own. And what I think everyone needs to understand is that all forms of energy have been and are subsidized. And solar, as it turns out, has been subsidized by far the least of any energy technology that's on the grid today. So I would just point out that we do strive to be a subsidy-free industry, but that it's something that both Senate Republicans and Democrats have subsidized for literally decades in all forms of energy, and continues to happen currently.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, like Matt said earlier, is just not pulling the rug out from these industries. I mean, all of you that work in businesses know how challenging that can be and that it really makes it impossible to plan as a business. So giving enough runway so that businesses can properly plan, particularly given the benefits that solar and new technologies like battery storage add to the grid. So these are the key states. I would definitely recommend screenshotting this right now, but these are states that have Republican senators and are going to be some of the most important to be contacting over the next few weeks. And if you want to go to the next slide.
Go back real quick, like just Idaho, for example, is Senator Crapo, and he is the head of the Senate Finance Committee. If you're building in Idaho, they've already heard from a large Idaho builder, but that would be, an example of like where you could really have an impact. And I'm sure what are a few other ones, Bronte, where you think would just be high impact?
Yeah, I would say Idaho, Texas, Utah are some. Tennessee would be really important. North Carolina, Matt mentioned Tom Tillis earlier. Reaching out to those folks would be particularly important. But if you operate in any of these states, like definitely be reaching out to senators, and we'll actually give you all a tool to do that in a second. But if you want to go to the next slide. So this is the key ask that we're making. So asking senators to ensure that the language prohibiting leasing of home solar under 48E is removed before the bill is voted out of the Senate Finance Committee. That's going to be the most important thing that we're asking folks to do. I know I covered a lot of what was in the House bill earlier, and folks are working on all of those elements, but the most important message to be giving to senators right now is this ask. All right, if you want to go to the next slide. Okay. Julia, I'm not sure if you can maybe put this link in the chat for folks. So these are some sample talking points. We'll make sure these get sent out afterwards too. Obviously, feel free to use your own, but making sure that if you call, give your name, your title, the company you work with, if you build homes in the states that you're calling about, making sure that we're getting in the ask to remove the leasing exclusion that's currently in 48E. Yeah, thank you, Aaron. A little bit about the energy tax credits, and then once again, reiterating what it is that we're asking the senator to do. We want them to basically say that they would vote no on any bill that keeps this prohibition in place. And then if folks go to the link that we put in the chat, that has a tool where you'll be able to enter in your state. It'll pull up the phone numbers of your senators. If you switch states, if you want to do a state maybe that you don't live in, but that your company works in, you can do that, and it will give you information. It'll have similarly a couple of talking points on there, and give you the ability to do things like send an email. So that's the first thing. Call your senators. If folks could do it right when we get off this call, that would be incredibly helpful. You want to go to the next slide. So the next thing is, if emailing your senator, you will find this link to email your senator from that same page that Aaron put in the chat. If you click on the option to email your senator, it will take you to a page that looks like this. And you can fill out the information to add your voice, and it's a helpful tool to be able to reach out to your senator. And then the last thing, next slide. The last thing, like I mentioned, is going to be reaching out to folks in your network. So making sure that if this is an issue you care about, that you're engaging friends, family, colleagues, particularly if they are living in any of those target states, and asking them to reach out. It only takes a couple of minutes, but is incredibly impactful, particularly as senators are figuring out what they want to prioritize in this bill. That's really a third way that can be really important. And then I will put my email in the chat. And like I said, if folks have, if you have questions, you can reach out to me. But if you are interested in getting engaged more than happy to help figure out a way that makes sense for you.
I wish we were having this meeting earlier in the week, because the action taking that we're asking is actually pretty quick. We're expecting the Senate to potentially come out with some decisions this weekend. The Trump administration or President Trump is driving for a July 4th, trying to get this all done by July 4th, which is a very, very fast timeline. And so if in fact the Senate makes some recommendations by this weekend, they need to hear from us immediately on the importance of this. So that would be very helpful.
Yeah, and if you scan this QR code, it'll take you to that same action page as well. And then happy to answer any questions.
Of course, Bronte, people could add in not only the 48E, but I support 25D. I support the 45L tax credits. I support zero energy homes in the DOE Building Technologies Office. I support energy. Unfortunately, we're seeing the flood the zone. Feel free to talk about those senators, on kind of the laundry list. But of course, the most critical thing has been 45E. And I just think, if you're in a red state, that's the most important to call. Just as Bronte and Matt said, if you have friends who are builders in those red states, they're the most important to call. If you are a manufacturer in a red state, that's the most important for you to call. I'm here in a blue state. My senators are on board. It's not going to move the needle, right? So that's a specific ask. We've got time for any additional questions. If you put those in the Q&A or the chat, we'll make sure and get those to the team. But there's a great scan. I just scanned this in. It pulls my senators right up. There's a click to call. There's a click to email. So pretty straightforward way to do it. I do think that it's important that you include the address of your office in that state. They're going to kind of do a check that you're a business operating in that state. So that's kind of critical as you go through that process. Hey, we got a Q&A. Thanks. I was killing time there. Okay. This is Matt Volk. Are there any higher ups in Sunrun talking with senators or those in the Trump administration to sway them to have the solar tax cuts removed from the bill?
Yeah, we have had, I would say, really people at all levels getting engaged on this, and have executives that are sharing with senators directly how important these tax credits are and how problematic it would be to rip the rug out from under them, like we said, so quickly by the end of the year. So definitely people sharing with some key decision makers how important these are.
Yeah.
Well,
I think they're,
our CEO is in Washington, D.C. right now and has been living in Washington, D.C. She's attending Senator Crapo's fundraiser like at lunchtime. So I guess Eastern time, that would have been a couple of hours ago.
Mhm.
Our president, Paul Dixon, has been joining her in D.C., meeting with many senators. Bronte, we got a senator, the letter that we got to supporting the tax credits, we had something like 22 senators sign on. Is that about right?
There were a few senators signed on before the House bill was released. And then many members of the House had also signed on in support. So I would say some on a parallel track, knowing that if the bill is amended in the Senate, it'll need to go back to the House. We're still communicating with members of the House as well about the impact that the prohibition on this tax credit would make.
Was there a second part to that question that we missed?
No, I think
I don't
that's
think
it.
so.
I think you're seeing the same from Tesla, the same from QCell, the same from, our friends at Goodman Dyke. And, we've got many, many folks who are worried about these credits going away. So get involved, reach out to your senators, particularly if you're in a red state. Reach out to Bronte. She's a great resource. And I love what you say, Bronte, that everyone right now is in government affairs. We
Yeah,
all
everyone's
are.
a policy person right now.
Everyone's in policy right now. So, well, great. Well, we'll put this recording out as quickly as we can and see if you can, anyone that attended, if you want to share that with your colleagues. But it's a great call to action, and we hope you'll all join us in supporting this incredible industry that's been so important to zero energy ready homes across this great country. So, Bronte, Matt, thank you so very much for joining us today. All right,
Appreciate
everyone,
Thank
take
you.
care. Bye.